just look at how we talk about Duke and Carolina throughout the year if they have an off season. Like if UConn doesn't have it, if UConn has an off season, like it's a big shoulder shrug for the grand scheme of things. What happens at Duke and happens at Carolina.
We're not there. We don't know that. There's a pretty intensive group. It's called the Horde that covers UConn. So I mean,
I get it. I get it, but I still don't think it's the same way that it is with Duke and Carolina, which is truly two national brands, Joe, which is why when Carolina has the kind of season that they have, there's this existential crisis as to what's going to happen next for Hubert Davis and how does he kind of keep this program going forward. And the conversations about transfers at other schools don't take the kind of sentiment that transfers at Carolina have taken this offseason. And we have the latest transfer portal announcement at UNC. It's from Caleb Love. And he tweeted it out 15 minutes ago. With love, the journey continues. My time at UNC has been rewarding and has inspired me to grow on and off the court. I'm extremely thankful to God for this journey. I'd like to give a special thank you to Coach Roy Williams for opening up the door of opportunity by recruiting me to play at UNC and to live out my dream of playing for this program. Thanks to Coach Hubert Davis and the coaching staff for allowing me to play under their leadership the last 2 years and constantly challenging me. To my teammates, I will always cherish the bonds we created over the years and the memories that will last us a lifetime. I've taken some time with my family to reevaluate what's best for me to continue to grow as a player, and I've decided to enter the transfer portal to continue my journey. Thank you, UNC family and community, for embracing a kid from St. Louis. I will love you all forever. And it's interesting that we live in a world where we've graduated from recruiting announcement graphics to transfer portal announcement graphics. I'm not highlighting just Caleb Love. Yeah. Everybody's got one of these right now.
If I made you bet a significant amount of money to you, and I asked you who led North Carolina in scoring this year, would you be able to correctly answer that question?
No, I would not. I would not.
It was Caleb Love.
It was Caleb Love. But most people would not know that.
I mean, everyone thought he had such a terrible year. Now, Please don't get me wrong. He shot 29% from the three-point line. That's not good. That's certainly not good enough for a lead guard. But it wasn't like he was terrible.
No.
He was their leading scorer this year.
He was their leading scorer, but it also kind of comes down to when you watch the games, just how at times he cost them wins.
Well, there was ups and downs. You had to ride the wave with him.
It was the love roller coaster.
And they were able to ride that wave all the way to the national title game the previous year. No matter where he goes from here and whatever happens to him from here, he is the author of one of the most famous shots, not only in UNC history, but in college basketball history, with his three-pointer over Mark Williams to beat Duke last year in the Final Four. So he will always have that, and I'm encouraged to see as many North Carolina fans underneath his post with the comments retweeting that picture, saying thank you, saying good luck. You reach a point where you have to move on to do what's best for you.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing there was an honest conversation between Caleb Love and Hubert Davis. Hey, what's best for you? What's best for the program? And I think a fresh start for Caleb Love is what's best for him. And I think a fresh start for Carolina, building off of R.J. Davis and Armando Bacot, is what's best for Carolina. Because, quite frankly, those emotions, those highs and those lows, they're difficult to take. They can be, and especially when you're shooting 29%. But, he still was their best option.
So here's the thing about Caleb Love, and it's perfectly okay to have complicated feelings about his transfer, and where he ends up will only add to some of those complicated feelings.
Sure.
If he goes back to, you mentioned St. Louis, if he goes and he transfers
the
to
SEC,
play somewhere in the SEC, I think most people would understand that sort of thing. But as the year went on, and you watched the times in which Carolina had games in hand or had worked back into getting in a game, and then suddenly the mistakes would pile up, a lot of finger pointing would go in the direction of Caleb Love. Why did he take that shot? Well, to your point, he's their leading scorer. He's hit a bunch of big shots. So why would he not think like that? And also, clearly the coaching staff believes in him because they never took him off the court. It wasn't until the end of the year against Duke where you actually saw Hubert Davis take him out of the lineup in crucial minutes early on in that game because he didn't like the way that he was playing the game and the shot selection. But he also would make plays incredibly more difficult than they needed to be sometimes. Rather than going to the basket, he would just do like a random pass when nobody was expecting him to pass. So there's all sorts of strange things that happen with Caleb Love. You take the good with the bad, and that's what I'm getting at is that's what adds to the complicated conversation around him And while you're right, it is good to see that people say, hey, man, thanks for the memories. Best of luck with whatever change of scenery you have. But here's what I'm afraid of as we get further away from this decision and we start looking at whatever the roster is going to look like after Hubert Davis goes to the transfer portal. The pressure is actually going to be on Armando Bacot and R.J. Davis going forward to be the leaders that people feel they should be or how they portray themselves, okay? There's an interesting way that we've talked about guys coming back and the reasons why they've decided to come back. Duke, for instance. Tyrese Proctor, we find out that we're running it back. I'm going to come back. And that's all done in the guise of a traditional sense. Oh, okay. Proctor's coming back because he's got some stuff to work on. The class that he
physically stronger,
the class that he reclassified from, well, those guys are going to be coming with him. There's stuff to work on. He can move up in the draft board, okay? At NC State, they've had some transfers, and it's like, okay, it's roles, it's understanding NIL money, and yada, yada, yada. But at Carolina, NIL is actually being positioned as the reason why things did not work out last year. So, Dennis, I don't know if you have this clip, but this was from Vince Carter's podcast. I believe he was talking to Antoine Jameson on this podcast, and they straight up started blaming NIL for the reason why. It actually echoes something that we got from Joel Berry when we talked to the former UNC champ in Greensboro for the ACC tournament. We asked him, hey, man, when you guys ran it back 16-17 and the pressure, you handled it, you completed the mission. And Joel Berry said at that time, well, you see, when we came back, the only thing that we were playing for was the championship. But now with NIL, there's other things to be worried about. And Armando Bacot has been the poster person for a lot of the conversations about NIL. In fact, he was on the cover of the New York Times on a big expose about name, image, and likeness that featured quotes from Bubba Cunningham. And here's that conversation with Vince Carter.
You know how that Duke-Carolina game, I remember the game at Duke, and I remember the ball just rolling on the floor. And I'm just like, nobody's diving for loose. That's a Duke-Carolina game. And I love the guys. I think, we just got to the point, we got complacent, and we felt like it was going to be as easy as it was. Because we caught fire at the right time of the season. Yeah. So I think they thought that we could just carry that over. But as you know, other teams are like preseason number one. I mean, they're the hunted. Going at
hunters anymore. They were the hunted.
And we never counteracted. And I talked to Hubert, and he was like, "Well, this is a different team." He said, "This is a totally different team than what I had last year." He said they got to worry about other, things outside of basketball. But think about it, Vince. For us, it was just we go to class, we do our work, and the one thing, especially in my profession, what I see now is the feel for the game is not there. Imagine all the open runs that we had. Vince, I went there the first day they was able to practice or go up, pick up. So they played that day, and I had the boys with me, and I said, "I'll see you guys tomorrow. Y'all gonna play again tomorrow, right?" They were like, "Nah, we scheduled to play next week." I was like, "Huh?" So for us, we got a basketball scholarship to go to the University of North Carolina. Of course, don't get me wrong, school, whatever other kind of things you got going on. But, Vince, we play every single day. And I think the problem that we're dealing with is these guys that everybody can work out. Everybody can dribble between the legs. Everybody can do all this other stuff. But the feel for the game, the chemistry, the competitiveness is kind of like taking a step back, I think.
So that was Vince Carter and Antoine Jameson, and they got into a larger conversation about NIL and things like that.
Yeah, interesting. Jameson, who I consider to be one of the best players in Carolina history. Mm-hmm. If he had stayed that fourth year, no one would have ever touched any of his records. Look them up.
No.
Okay, he was amazing at Carolina. Interesting that his observation was the same exact one I had from that Carolina game in Durham.
Mm-hmm.
There was a loose ball. There was nobody on the floor, and I even pointed out Caleb Love, and people were like, "You're too hard on him. He plays really hard. Why are you questioning effort?"
There you go.
Sometimes I get it right, and I also think there was never a connectiveness with this group this year.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that,
yeah.
And I hate to highlight just the two games against Duke, But you saw it. There was
But
never
those were the games.
But there was never this urgency. There was never somebody flying on the floor.
Yeah.
There was never like, hey, let's share the ball. Let's get excited. Let's point to the passer. Heck, let's get the walk on up, do the dance. It was just something missing chemistry wise with this team. And sure enough, I know a lot of people have pointed out NIL, and I'm not going to sit here and dispute what Hubert Davis is telling former players. I'm certainly not going to do that.
No. Well, Hubert Davis told us that at the beginning of the season.
He did point that out publicly. I would just say this about the NIL and the NIL money. It's going to be a part of college basketball moving forward, and North Carolina needs to figure that out.
Yeah.
And you've seen Jim Larinaga make the comments that he has about NIL and about how these teammates, they know this is public information based on the reporting. He's like, I would love to see these other schools share the same type of information that has come out about Miami, because our players have accepted that.
Yeah.
Our players have embraced that. Could it be that there was some jealousy there? Oh my gosh, Armando got more money than I did, so I'm not going to pass on the ball today. That's fairly petty. I don't know if that's.
I don't buy into that. And this is what. And this is, and we'll close it on this. And again, I'll get back to most people, most fans. 99% of fans are going to look at Caleb Love's announcement today and go, "Hey man, best of luck to you. We're always going to have last year, and thanks."
Yeah.
But once that dissipates, there's going to be, all right, well, the addition by subtraction, or like now that this person's not here, how are they going to? What's the gel going to be like?
He's already been scapegoated.
He's already been scapegoated.
Control that.
Which again now puts it back on Armando Bacot specifically. All right, specifically Armando Bacot, because when you talk about Carolina next year, what are they coming back for? It's almost dismissive. Well, what else is Armando Bacot going to do? Well, he's going to make more money playing at Carolina than he would playing anywhere else.
It's the same thing Ryan Kalkbrenner's coming back to Creighton
or it's
or Drew Timme at Gonzaga this year.
Like I heard Brendan Marks on with Adam earlier today from The Athletic, and he talked about, Armando Bacot stands to be the all-time rebounder in NCAA history. Sure. He can enter the top 10 of scoring for UNC. It's like all these individual things for Armando Bacot and this is not on Armando. I'm just saying how it's discussed. The discussion around Carolina and how these things are playing out is different than how it's being discussed, say, at Duke, where, again, Tyrese Proctor's coming back because why? Well, more traditional sense of. Nobody's talking. Have you heard any discussion about NIL and guys at Duke? Any discussion about that?
No, but that's why they hired a general manager.
And this is another part
who worked on the Nike circuit. Well, we don't talk about that.
And this is another part of the Hubert Davis dragging North Carolina into where modern college basketball is going. And we just mentioned Jim Larinaga.
That's not nefarious, by the way. It was a smart move by Duke.
No, it's an incredibly smart move. Just like it's incredibly smart for Jim Larinaga to understand, hey, man, I'm at Miami. I got super motivated donors. I got this life wallet, and I can bring in players. Hey, man, I'm going to adapt. So this is all part of a very layered conversation.
Brought in the
Duke,
right players, too, don't forget.
Or a very layered conversation at Carolina that I think they're spending a good chunk of the offseason to correct, and we'll see what the payoff is going to be next year.